Hello fellow mood readers, and welcome back to my channel. Happy October. If you haven't seen my short, you could check it out. I just did a short on doing the decorations and stuff around. I've got these little guys here, which I love them. They're great. Today I'm excited to talk about some of my 5-star horror books. And one of them I actually just recently finished. I really enjoyed it, and I kind of like flew through most of the audio in one day, and then I finished it the next day. It was actually in a prior video that I did of books that I've been wanting to get to for a while, so I'm really glad to have finally read it and see what everybody was talking about, because I did see it quite a bit. When it came out, I saw it quite a bit, and everybody seemed to like it. So I'm excited to bring these books to you. So today I'm going to talk to you about 11 books that I gave 5 stars. I was going to, I think, originally do 10, but I really want to give you some of these reads just in case you're feeling like a spooky book. There's a few of these that don't get quite enough love, and I just wanted to shout them out and tell you, about why I gave them 5 stars. So without further ado, let's get started. So first up, we're going to talk about that most recent read, and that's going to be Schrader's Chord by Scott Leeds. This one is a lot of fun. It's very different. It's got music knowledge. You could tell that the author really loves music, and you can definitely tell who he really loves throughout. But I had a lot of fun with this, with reading it, and some of the imagery in here is pretty horrifying. You mostly switch between Charlie and Anna in this one. You follow Charlie as he gets the phone call that tells him that his father has passed away, and he goes back to help with the funeral and help his sisters and, tie up all those loose ends there. And he gets left with his father's record store, but also a black case that has 4 records inside that can open the gate to the land of the dead. I don't know. I had a lot of fun with it. It was really fast paced. It set up a little bit in the beginning, but I like that. You get to know the characters a little bit. I didn't feel at any point that it was super slow. The ending it kind of got a little crazy, but I did like it for how different it is. And I think that if it sounds good to you, you're a music fan, you like it, and I believe the audio narrator did a great job, but definitely check this one out if you haven't yet. It's well worth a read. So next up on my list is going to be Come With Me by Ronald Malfi. This was my first Ronald Malfi, and I thought it was fantastic. There's grief in this novel because the main character loses his wife, and he tries to find out what she was doing in the weeks prior to her death, and he finds out some things that he didn't know about her. It's got grief, it's creepy in parts. I really enjoyed it. I think the atmosphere was great, and I will definitely be reading more by this author. I believe the only other one I read was The Night Parade, and I'm not entirely sure. I don't remember it all too much, but I think I want to give that one another chance because I don't think I was in the mood for it at the time. And I think I gave that one like 3 stars or 3.5, but I've heard a lot of great things also about Blackmouth, which I do have the audio for, and I might get to this month to continue on with some of the horror reads. But he also did just release Small Town Horror, which I've heard good things about, but definitely check out Come With Me. I don't hear enough about this one, and I think it's really great. Okay, so next up, we have one of my auto-buy authors. Of course, they're going to be on this list. So I picked Chuck Wendig's Black River Orchard. This one was fantastic, and look at that lovely paperback. I do have the hardcover back there, but I bought this one and got it signed because I really did like the cover, and Mr. Wendig was signing, so apples, apples, apples. But I thought this one was great. It was really nice to see, to read a book or listen. I also got the audiobook for this. as well, because both April and I love Chuck Wendig, and so sometimes one of us will read the physical and then one of us will listen to an audiobook, so that way we could both do it at the same time. Black River Orchard actually takes place in Pennsylvania, so actually listening or reading things about our area is always actually kind of nice. And usually Chuck Wendig does throw something from PA in there. I believe Wanderers actually started out in PA as well. But this one, you have a small town that's transformed when 7 strange trees begin bearing magical apples. This one is quite something. I did really enjoy it. His character work is great. I never thought of it quite that way with a cult. This one is dealing with cults, so if you're feeling a culty type book, I would suggest this one. Everybody begins to get obsessed by these apples that they have grown, and I think that it just starts to be really creepy, and some of the things that they're willing to do and some of the things that are done. And then there's just some really horrible people in here, which usually he does manage to throw in and do really well also. So I highly recommend this one. Pick it up, especially in the fall time. So if you're not feeling it quite this year, then I'd suggest next year picking it up and reading it during the fall is probably perfect for it. Especially if you like to go apple picking or anything like that, I would just definitely highly recommend this one. Next up, if you are a movie fan, this one has an adaptation. So I'm going to go with The Ritual by Adam Neville. These characters don't start out very likable. There's some of them that got on my nerves heavily, but I will be the first to admit that I did cry during this book. So take that as you will and definitely give this a shot. This takes place in the Scandinavian wilderness. And it's about 4 old university friends, and they get lost in the woods because there's just something not right about them. And I think they did a very good job with the adaptation. It is on Netflix. As you can see, I've got the perma sticker, which I kind of don't like, but I will take it anyway because I did want this book and I'm glad that I have it. So I think Adam Neville does atmosphere very well, and some of the parts in this were just really creepy. You have the descriptions and the depictions of these woods, but there's also some buildings, some cottages that are out there that were empty, and just some of the things that they find and the things that they deal with and they find in these trees. It's just top notch. Like I said, I did like the adaptation. I thought they did a pretty good job. So if you want to read this, you could also pair it with the movie and see if you like the difference and see how it is. But I think they did a good job, and I think this book is great. Adam Neville usually doesn't disappoint. I also read the Reddening, and I enjoyed that one, although not as much as The Ritual. I think it was a little bit slower than this, but I would definitely say give this one a try. This was my first time with this author, and he's become one of those authors that every time I see one of his books come out, I just want to pick it up. And I'm a few behind now, but I will get back into it, so check this one out. Next up, I have another auto by author, and I am a few behind in backlist, so I will have to get to those. But that is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I spoke a couple of times about atmospheric reads, and I really do like them. I love when the author is able to transport you to the place that they're making you imagine, make you feel like you're there, make you feel tense, and make you feel that suspense, like you might actually get murdered or have something terrible happen to you. But this one here really got me with the imagery, I think, more than anything else. I adore Frances. I think Frances was my favorite character. But these books by Silvia Moreno Garcia, you just can't go wrong. I really enjoyed everything I've read so far by her. I read The Daughter of Dr. Moreau. I read Silver Nitrate, which was a more recent release, but I did not get to The Seventh Veil of Salome, I think was the recent release. I haven't gotten to that one yet. If you have, let me know, and if you like it. I really enjoy everything. Like The Beautiful Ones was also a 5-star read from me. But Mexican Gothic is still my favorite, and I think it's because of that atmosphere and just the things that happen in here and how different this novel actually is. So definitely read this if you like mushrooms, if you like atmosphere, and you like kind of that dark, gritty, kind of gothic. It's very gothic. So if you like all of that, definitely give this one a try. I would like to know your thoughts on this one also. I know a lot of people do really like this, and I wish that the adaptation had worked out. I saw her tweet about it not going through, but I really would have liked to have seen this adapted. I think they could do quite a lot with it, actually. But let me know if you enjoyed this one also, if you've gotten to it. But if you haven't, I highly recommend it. It was one of my favorite horror reads, I think, that year. But I just can't stop thinking about it all the time, and I think it's almost time for a reread. And so far, this actually has been, I think, the shorter book on these recommendations so far. This next one, if you're a horror fan, might not need an introduction, but it might. So that's The Troop by Nick Cutter. This one I will probably never read again, but I may. I don't think I want to ever read it again. The body horror in this is terrible. So, okay, not terrible, but terrible, if you know what I mean. This book deals a lot with children because you follow a troop of boys, why it's called The Troop, into the Canadian wilderness for the weekend camping trip with their scoutmaster, and all kinds of things just go wrong. Check the trigger warnings for all of the trigger warnings for this, because this book is hard. It's a tough read. I listened to it and there were times I just had to stop because I'm like, no, I can't keep going. I need to give myself a break from this. The body horror and imagery in this is something else. I've never read anything like it, and I just think that if nothing bothers you, maybe go into it blind. I thought I heard something about an adaptation, and I'd like to see how that goes, but I also don't know if I want to see how that goes. Like I said, if you know what I mean. I just don't think I can say very much about this without giving too much away for those that wouldn't want spoilers and don't really want to heed the warnings. But this book is quite the nightmare if you go into it. I know some people have said it was slow in the beginning, which it is maybe a little bit, but you do get that forewarning. You do get kind of a little tip off in the very beginning of what it's going to be. And I don't know, just something about this is horrible and horrifies me. And I feel like it's one of those books that you don't want to recommend, because some people just be like, what is wrong with you? Why are you recommending this? But I think this just has something that just really deeply unsettles me personally, and it was horrifying for me personally. So I think that it has also horrified quite a few people, and I know that it's gotten 5 stars from a bunch of us that would probably never want to pick it up ever again. It's even blurbed up here by Stephen King. He said, "The Troop scared the hell out of me and I couldn't put it down. This is old school horror at its best." I hesitate to recommend it, but it is 5 stars from me, because if anything can make me feel that way for a horror book and put it aside, it took way longer than audiobooks usually take for me, and that's saying something. So let me know if you've read this and what you think about it, because I would honestly like to know. And since we've just mentioned his name, I'm going to go directly into Stephen King's Pet Sematary. This will come as a surprise to no one, because this book is amazing. And there are several Stephen Kings that I could have put here, but I wanted to talk about Pet Sematary because there's just something about this book and its grief and the things that go on. I just think this is the perfect time for this. And if you don't know what it's about, I'd be shocked. But there's also a couple of adaptations. The more recent one, the remake, was okay. For me personally, I still like the original adaptation more. And the audiobook is great. What was his name? Michael C. Hall narrates it, and I thought he did a very good job. I think this one doesn't need an introduction, and certainly the author doesn't, so I'm not going to linger too long on this. I highly recommend it. If you haven't gotten to this part of your backlist for Stephen King, I would say definitely pick this one up. It's one of my favorites of his, aside from, The Shining or 11/22/63, which isn't one of his horror books, but I highly recommend this for this time if you haven't picked this one up yet. So recently I just got in this author's new book. It's right over there, and it's Alexis Henderson, but I picked for this video The Year of the Witching. This was this author's debut. Yes, this was this author's debut, and what a debut it was. It's a fantastic witchy read. It's different. It's wonderful. It's dark. All of the things you could possibly want from a witch novel this time of year. I didn't know what to expect going in, and I was blown away. I gave this 5 stars flat out, and I had no questions, and I flew through it. It's not super long either. Probably around 300 and something, 350s, I think. And I believe I saw that it has a number on Goodreads, so it said like Bethel #1. So I wonder if Alexis Henderson plans to continue on in this world or continue the story, but I highly recommend this. It's been a while since I read it, but I still remember bits and pieces, and I absolutely do think about them. So I will be rereading this at some point. It's gorgeous writing. I love it, and I can't wait to reread it, and I can't wait to read An Academy for Liars. I also haven't read House of Hunger. I know that one was vampires, and it was the one after this. That one dealt with vampires, but I did not pick that one up yet. Like I said, I highly recommend this one if you're feeling like a witchy read. This is perfect for this time of year. This next book I'm not going to linger on too long. I've talked about my love for this author several times and how he is auto-buy for me, but it's A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. I love this book. It was my first Tremblay read. It's what got me started. I'm so thankful to whoever it was on Twitter that tweeted out about this, and I was like, that sounds really interesting. I'm going to get it. It was very difficult to find at that point because Cabin at the End of the World wasn't even out yet. Paul Tremblay's prior works, I think, were out of print at the time, so this was hard to get my hands on at first, but I'm really glad to have read this, and I'm really glad to have gotten into his works. You deal with possession, and you deal with a reality TV show, and it splits off. You have partial blog posts from somebody who's going back and looking at the reality TV show. So I think this is just a lot of fun. It was a great novel, and you get a little bit more of Marjorie and Mary in growing things. There's short stories and all kinds of hidden things everywhere for Marjorie and Mary, so I highly recommend picking this one up. There's so many theories, and it's making me, somebody mentioned a theory to me, and now I really need to go back and reread it and see it with that kind of second perspective, because I think the rereadability of this one is pretty great because you could pick up on things early on that you didn't know the first time you read it. So I kind of want to go back in and see if some of those theories might be true. I'm kind of curious. And this is actually the copy that I got signed. I was actually first in Paul Tremblay's line at BookCon before it went away after COVID, but I was super excited to meet him. So next up, I have an author that I've read several times, and that is Alma Katsu with The Hunger. I really also enjoyed The Deep, but I know not as many others enjoyed that one as much as I did. I really like the way Alma Katsu writes. The atmosphere. I like the characters. Usually they're great or they're awful, which I love when authors can get that right. Just like Adam Neville with The Ritual. It's just, people are people. You're gonna have awful people, and you're gonna have people that you don't want to root for. So sometimes that happens. Alma Katsu's really really done something with the hunger here. I'll read you the synopsis for this because it's been a little bit. She writes a lot of historical horror, and I really like that. The Deep was Titanic. This one was The Donner Party, and I listened to another one that dealt with camps, and it was a great book, and I don't hear too much about it, but I do want to get it physically. I just haven't gotten there yet. But this one is evil is invisible and it is everywhere. That is the only way to explain the series of misfortunes that have plagued the wagon train known as the Donner Party. Depleted rations, bitter quarrels, and the mysterious death of a little boy have driven the isolated travelers to the brink of madness. Though they dream of what awaits them in the West, long-buried secrets begin to emerge, and dissent among them escalates to the point of murder and chaos. As members of the group begin to disappear, the survivors start to wonder if there really is something disturbing and hungry waiting for them in the mountains, and whether the evil that has unfolded around them may have in fact been growing within them all along. So I highly recommend this one, and I did get the audiobook for a different one, and I think it was actually one that was recommended afterwards, which was nonfiction. Oh look, this one's also blurred by Stephen King. Deeply, deeply disturbing. There. I recommend picking this one up if you haven't read it yet. Anything by Alma Katsu, actually. The Hunger, The Deep. I did like The Deep, but I think The Hunger is a great one to start with if you want to start there. She just gets that supernatural kind of horror, and I just love the atmosphere and just the way that she writes. I love her writing. So I actually started with The Deep for this author. For some reason, I couldn't remember which one I had read first, but it was The Deep. Probably people might like The Hunger more. Just seeing that a lot of the people didn't like The Deep as much. It was like a slow burn. It was a supernatural horror, just like this one, and like all of them. And I just love the ghosts. I love anything like that. And I thought I just really enjoy her writing. So I recommend picking up The Hunger. My final one for this list today of 5-star horror reads is going to be Stephen Graham Jones with The Only Good Indians. This one I went into not really knowing what to expect. And I do like to go into horror that way because sometimes even the descriptions can give away a little more than I would like. But this one definitely blew me away. Check trigger warnings, like I said before previously for The Troop and Come With Me or any of them. Just check trigger warnings if you have some things that you don't like to read about. This one especially, there are a couple scenes in here that are something, and I wouldn't want you to stumble into it unknowing. So check trigger warnings for this. There's still one scene I can't get out of my head for this. I just think it probably will never go away. But this left me with a lot of discomfort, and I think he was able to really do something with this that I didn't fully expect. So I will read this synopsis because it really doesn't give too much, but this way you could decide if you would want to read it or not. So, seamlessly blending classic horror and a dramatic narrative with sharp social commentary, The Only Good Indians follows 4 American Indian men after a disturbing event from their youth puts them in a desperate struggle for their lives. Tracked by an entity bent on retribution, these childhood friends are helpless as the culture and traditions they've left behind catch up to them in a violent, vengeful way. And it is very violent and very vengeful. Just saying. This is brutal. It's almost hard to recommend to also. Just, there's some things that I'll always think about, and one of the things is in here, and I think that he does a great job with horror. You could tell he's a fan of horror, a fan of slashers, especially in his newer novels where you have your final girl, Jade Daniels. For me, this one I think is my favorite of his. So go check it out, and I really hope that you take something away from it. It's a difficult read. in certain places. It deals with a lot of themes, and there are a couple of perspective jumps because you are dealing with a few different people, but you're also dealing with the entity in this as well. That shift, I think, got me a couple times. I wasn't expecting it. But it doesn't do it too much. It was just very different, and it took me out a tiny bit, but that wasn't enough to take away from this novel. So I highly recommend this one. I highly recommend all of these that I have named. Let's see that stack. Hold on. So this is my 5-star stack right here. These are all horror books that I've enjoyed, all horror books that have made me uncomfortable. I don't get very uncomfortable a lot of times. So even some of these have not, even though they're horror, but they just have great themes, they have great atmosphere, and great writing. These are stellar authors. There's so many authors that I could have included also, but I got it down to these 11 books. And I hope that I showed you something that you haven't seen before or that you just haven't picked up yet. Let me know if you do intend on getting to any of these this year or what your October reads look like. I'd really like to know. I'm glad I got to at least a couple of those hopefuls that I talked about in one of my previous videos, but I do think I will get to a few more of those because I am still in the mood for the Reformatory. So I think that will be my next read after the 13th Child, which I am almost done with. So I could potentially finish that one very soon and start on the Reformatory by Tananarive, which might make my 5-star list for this year. We'll see. I hope so. I've heard so many great things and so many great things about that author, so I'm very excited to check out her work. Here's all those titles. I will list them in the description below so that way you can find them if you missed any part of the video. And let me know what you thought of these and what some of your 5-star reads were for horror, what you would recommend for this spooky season. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.